Show.
Here we are.
Again.
Yet again.
Another quiet week.
Nothing happened.
In world affairs. Not least in Washington.
Nothing went on at all, no. Nothing I can recall anyway.
I think a snowflake fell somewhere.
Yeah, snow. Still winter. This winter's never going to end.
Yeah.
Yeah, apart from 2 air accidents. Yeah, maybe we want to mention those.
Well, 3 depending on how you want to count them.
What's the third?
The F-35.
Oh, yeah.
That just kind of...
They just do that, though.
I think they're designed that way.
That's a built-in feature. There's a button in there, fall out of the sky.
On rotation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a crazy video, too. When did that happen relative to the others?
It was a day or two before the Wednesday one. So maybe Monday.
F-35, the collision in DC, and then Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Did Philadelphia happen the day after or 2 days?
2 days, no?
2 days.
Friday. Was it Friday? Yeah.
Friday and Wednesday night. But we only heard about it Thursday. That's why it seemed to be.
Friday night and Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plane madness.
Plane madness.
Well, it is, no?
As in PLANE?
Yeah.
Okay. You save that for later, Neil.
Save that for the end, Neil. That's meant to be the joke at the end.
Well, I suppose the question to ask is coincidence? 2 accidents, 2 or 3 days, depending on how you count it.
Accidents do happen.
Twice in a row, twice in a week. And, DC's kind of busy at the moment with confirmation hearings of key people as far as the Team Trump's concerned. Not suggesting that's why it happened, but you know what I mean. DC, a lot was happening last week in the buildings and in the skies. People have probably seen the footage up the wazoo, but there was footage that came out later, maybe early yesterday, which was closer. And the initial footage showed the 2 objects on a distant horizon, very low. You couldn't make out much. I think what I have here is CCTV from a building closer to the river. It's wild footage. I suppose this is just this doesn't really tell us anything different. It's just a sign of the times that there's cameras everywhere these days. So when stuff happens, oh no, that's completely the wrong thing. Never mind. Sorry,
you've been hacked by the Chinese.
I'm copy pasting so many links here.
Wrong.
Do I have it? No, I don't. Sorry, guys. I have good footage of the Philadelphia one, but anyway. So yeah.
What was this? What was this new angle?
It's just closer.
You mean this one?
Oh, good. It's closer, and you can make out a lot more features of the river, the shoreline. Yes, that's one of them. There were 2. This is from the airport. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the lights under each object reflected off the water. And it's just tragic. It just turns and belly flops over. The flight paths are well established. They're not directly head on with each other. It seems that the chopper is coming into the starboard to right of the plane because the plane has turned to its left.
Yeah.
For final approach to the runway.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not really a head-on. They would have initially seen each other in head-on.
Yeah.
One coming south, the chopper, one going north. But the American Airlines flights must bank left to make runway 33.
Mm-hmm.
So he's heading more like a northwest direction, which meant that for the chopper to impact it where it did, coming from the north, it needed to bank southwest to meet over the water. So they both have this last few seconds turn for it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's not good, because people were initially trying to think, well, is it possible everyone in the chopper is so focused on the controls that the light they are aware of directly head on, they make a mistaken assumption that it's actually that of the next craft coming in behind, taxi lined up for approach to the same runway.
Mm-hmm.
And their oopsie is they missed the glaringly obvious in front of them. But
Right.
I don't think so. Not if they both make this turn.
Well, I mean, none of them are making. I don't know. None of them are making, sharp turns. Neither of them are making sharp turns or any erratic movements. They're both, as you can see, and as you saw just on the video that we watched.
Yeah.
Both of them are flying pretty, level and straight.
Yeah.
In a sense, Mm.
You've put together a thread on X, and you found that the CNN report about the one way in which it's pretty sure the chopper was off course, its altitude.
Mm-hmm. And also its position when it actually impacted the plane.
Yes, over the river. Apparently these things are meant, if you're doing any military flights through DC, you're meant to hug the far side of the river, but it's in the middle of the river.
Yeah, they're meant to. Yeah, the East Bank. You're meant to. They generally fly along the East Bank. I mean, that doesn't. I suppose that doesn't necessarily. I mean, they're moving around. Obviously, you're following the trajectory of the river, so you're not flying in a straight line because the river doesn't flow in a straight line. So,
in that CNN link, can you pull that up, Scotty? Do a search for 100 feet, numbers 100 feet. Flight tracking data from the moments before the fatal mid-air collision appear to show the helicopter flying 100 feet above its allowed altitude and veering off the prescribed route along the Potomac River's east side. That's reported elsewhere as well, according to flight tracking data. Trump himself noted it too, almost immediately on his Truth Social. His post on it, he's like, what was that thing doing at that altitude?
mm-hmm.
Apparently, apparently it's known in DC that when the choppers do that, they must stay at or below 200 feet,
Mm-hmm.
super low. Anything higher than that, especially approaching that airport, which is, I never knew that. I know about Dulles Airport, but Reagan National is right in the center of DC.
Mm-hmm. It's on a little island.
Is it, I guess, a small airport? Is it an international airport?
Yeah. Very busy international airport, yeah.
Right in the middle of a city. I suppose DC's grown a lot in recent decades, but still it's unusual to have a major international airport so close to the city center. Unusual to my mind, anyway.
But that's one of the reasons why they have so many training missions and things for all of these different pilots who run these missions regularly, because they're going to be flying next to a major airport, so they have to stay sharp in order to avoid all this, which means running night missions and daytime missions and all that stuff in order to make sure that you're not
this never happens.
Yeah.
Well, there's two ways of looking at it. It's finally happened, and statistically it was risky, or it speaks to the anomaly that it did happen, that is so well ingrained and trained and known in downtown Washington, D.C., that it should not have happened.
I think it's the latter.
Yes. The media report, I mean, it took a while for them to state who the third crew member was, because they gave bios and backgrounds and official rankings and so on of the two men. I thought it was odd, but that it took, 3 days before they named the third person. In the meantime, there's rumors all over the internet. Oh, it's a DEI hire and it's a transgender and stuff. And no, not quite. It was a female pilot, though. And she's been now been named yesterday, Captain Rebecca Lobach. They said they withheld the name at the family's request. But then, why is her name out now? Was she the pilot or a co-pilot?
She was the pilot.
Read both. She was the pilot that night. At least,
so far as the reports that I read, it was that she was the pilot, and she was piloting because this was supposed to be kind of like a test run for her, or like, like a test to make sure that she
to get her wings or something, or to get it to the next, to get some grade or something.
No, not a grade, but
just training.
Yeah. Just training. And so there was her, and she was the one who was supposed to be piloting, and then there was the instructor who had over 1,000 hours of flight time. She herself had 500 hours, and presumably, like these are all people who are from the same area, and so I would think that this is kind of like their bread and butter.
Yeah, well, I think they're all from the 12th Army Aviation, from Fort Belvoir, which is south of the city. They're kind of doing a loop. They went up north, follow the city, around Langley, roughly, McLean in the north, and then follow the Potomac back south in a loop. I'm pretty sure they were all the same unit.
Yeah.
And Joe found that this 12th Army Aviation specific role, at least one specific role, right?
Yeah, it's basically, it's kind of like a VIP taxi service for members of the military and government officials, including the president, vice president, defense minister, whatever, etc., in the event that there is some kind of a national emergency. It's basically, it's not exact. I mean, continuity of government, for anybody who doesn't know what continuity of government is, it's basically a program that was started during the Second World War in 1955 or 1950s or early 60s, in order to cater to the event of a nuclear attack or some kind of major national emergency where the government was under threat, and they have all sorts of things where they'd whisk them off to what do you call it?
Secure locations.
No, the Mount Doom, I think. Is it Mount Doom? No, Mount.
It's a doomsday scenario. They call
What's it called?
Cheyenne
Mountain, and different places. Lots of different places. Shaniqua Mountain.
Sorry, that's how you say it.
Mount Shaniqua. Where they hide away and wait out the nuclear Armageddon and then come back, and so it's basically and it's also in the event that there's some kind of a decapitation strike, as they like to call it. Obviously, that would be mainly nuclear, unless it was Bin Laden or something who actually decapitated all members of the government all at once, which is possible.
Did he?
After 9/11, huh?
No,
that kind of a scenario. Well, yeah. I mean, you have to come up with more than one scenario, right? I mean, it's like a nuclear strike or Bin Laden cutting everybody's heads off, maybe. Anyway, and that would fit. That'd be more appropriate. More literally a decapitation strike. But anyway, so for those kind of scenarios, they have this continuity of government where like all the government's lost, and they have the deputies appointed and all that kind of stuff and different things. They whisk them off to different places to keep the government running, basically, in this kind of a
there's nothing spooky about this, because people in the old days, my early days anyway, on conspiracy lore, continuity of government was like said in hushed tones and stuff. But it seems to be routine now. That's just a term that they're all familiar with.
It kind of was routine even at the time. Like, it was understood that, especially in the context of nuclear Armageddon, whatever, you need some way to protect the government, So, and then it was never actually used really, except on 9/11, right after on 9/11, the day of 9/11. There was a bit of continuity of government shenanigans going on. They had the airplane in operation. Obviously 9/11 is very complicated, and there's all sorts of weird stuff around 9/11, what was actually happening that day. But that was only really the only time that it was ever activated. Anyway, so these helicopter pilots train, and there's only they only got 5 helicopters, and there's only 35 members of the actual battalion, and they specifically train, and their specific job is to take officials when and where necessary, in these helicopters that are specially modified, I suppose. Maybe nice seats.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Back massagers, a toilet, maybe, who knows.
Do they include that chopper that will take the president from the White House to an airfield?
Do they include?
Because I think that's
Marine One.
Marine One.
Not Marine One. No.
No. Okay.
No. So these are for emergency situations. Marine One is for just standard helicoptering around when you want to go when the president wants to go helicoptering and wants to travel by helicopter. But these are for specific, for not for the president, but it's basically for emergency situations.
Yeah.
But it's also used for not emergency, but very special, very important meetings, that kind of thing. Whatever. Who knows exactly what they're used for? But the point is, there's only 5 helicopters that are designated or that are part of this battalion, that is specifically for this purpose. And there's only 35 members of it in this battalion, the 12th Aviation Battalion. Wings of Freedom, and they have nicer ones as well. They use obviously standard military ones, but they have here's a photo of one actually that's part of it. They're not all like this now. So, and there's only 5 of them. So don't take this as a standard one, because I think the one the other night was actually a case. Again, it's not sure. I don't even know if it's because it's quite sensitive. I don't think the information would necessarily be that public. But this picture is of the. If you click on the picture there, of the helicopter, and it's I don't know if these are 5. Obviously, it's painted up, it's nicer, all kind of stuff. So it's more for VIP. They call them VIP taxis for the Washington elite type thing, members of government. But of course they are Black Hawks. They're the same Black Hawk helicopters. This one's just fancied up a minute. So it may be the case that there are 5 of these, maybe like this. I can't be sure because it's quite sensitive information. I can't really reveal my sources. But anyway, there may or may not be 5 of them like this exactly. And then all of the training takes place. Most of the training takes place on standard military Blackhawks, which are pretty much exactly the same as that, except they're not as fancy. So, and they're used to ferry people around, and that would be used to, to whisk members of Congress off. You can probably get a bunch of people on, but don't know exactly how many. What the seating arrangement is, you can maybe get 12 people on, or something like that.
It's a big bird.
So
how can you not see a giant aircraft in front of you?
That's what they would be ferried around on, and that's what this platoon is dedicated to doing, is travel, and they practice on the flight path up and down the Potomac from different locations within DC, where they would be most likely to be required to ferry members of government from and to. So they practice that quite a lot over and over again.
And I forgot to mention this earlier, but at the press conference that Trump gave with Hegseth and JD Vance and somebody else who I didn't recognize, Pete Hegseth said that the helicopter was on a continuity of government annual retraining mission.
Yeah.
And so basically, I think, with another article saying that the evaluated pilot was in command of the flight. So presumably this is just them doing, a standard run to just be like, yeah, you're still good. You're still certified to do the thing.
Yeah.
So it's presumably then something that she has done.
And Yeah, for sure. As part of her 500 hours, probably most of her 500 hours. Well, maybe not. There'd be certain training to obviously learn to fly the aircraft. But then once you're qualified to fly the helicopter, then you're going to be flying the route that you
would need to know
that you need to know, because that's all she's doing. She's not basically. I mean, that kind of training doesn't involve military training, if you know what I mean. It doesn't involve combat training. She's not a combat. It's a combat helicopter. Technically combat helicopter, but and it's used across the armed forces, but it's not. She's not a trained combat helicopter pilot because that would involve different training, obviously, in active war zones, etc. Whereas she's just flying around DC, so she's not.
Yeah, she's never been on combat duty. She's never been deployed.
So she's just flying up and down this area, yeah. And Hegseth actually, he said he just threw that in there as part of the briefing the day after that Trump gave, and Hegseth was through that, and he just mentioned that, and none of the press corps picked it up except for toward the end of it, and somebody did pick it up and asked Trump about it when he was back on, and Trump was like, Trump's just clueless. Here, this is it. Here, it's just a short segment.
When he said that this helicopter went on a continuity of government mission?
I don't know what that refers to.
But
they
put the volume up.
Practicing. They do that. They call it practicing, and they were, and that's something that should be done. It's only continuity in the sense that we want to have very good people, and that has to be in continuity, and that's what they refer to.
Oh no!
Just say continuity a few times.
Stop talking.
Oh God!
I had no idea what that means, but I'm going to tell you what I think it means, which is that we like to have good people in continuity.
And we want to continue using those good people.
In continuity. We want to continue with the continuity of
perpetuity.
In perpetuity of the continuity. So he obviously has no idea what actually continuity of government means, which is weird for like a
2-term president.
Yeah, because or maybe they just didn't let him in on it, because it's like, yeah, you know what, Trump, if Osama bin Laden never comes from you, we're not fucking rescuing you. So you don't need to know about it. You're not going to no bunker. You're not going to Mount Doom. There's no room in Mount
But
Doom.
Pete Hegseth knows all about it. We'll ferry him out.
Well, he's Pentagon, right? So, and Trump's too busy anyway with the tariffs to worry about that kind of stuff. But the actual flight was described as
of the plane.
No, the flight of the actual path was taken. It's something that happens multiple times every day, apparently. Not of that helicopter, but particularly that division, but
other craft, like
other helicopters flying. But maybe that, I don't know how often this particular battalion does it for ferrying famous or important people around. But it was described as, who actually described that? I have it somewhere here. Yeah, that's it. It's the, where do you go? I just had it and it disappeared. X sucks. It was described as not high risk, and something that happens basically every. There it is. Jonathan Kozoil, chief of staff of the Army's Aviation Directorate, said the risk level associated with the helicopter's route, which Army craft fly quite regularly, almost on a daily basis, was low. So people can. Obviously, whenever this happens, people are like, "Oh my God, how did this happen?" And they start going, "Why did this happen? Why are there helicopters flying in that area anyway?" And blah blah. And obviously, it hasn't been a problem before. This particular battalion that is dedicated to VIP ferrying and continuity of government situations, they've never had. Granted, they only have 5 aircraft and 35 people, but they've never had a crash. And pretty much all they do is, if any training they're doing or any practicing they're doing is in this particular area. So they'll be one of the ones that are relatively regularly flying up and down the Potomac past this airport, and they have never had a crash, let's say, at least. So this is the first time this ever happened. Probably people know that, but they haven't had any crashes at all in any other area. But I suppose if it was going to happen, it would be most likely to happen in an area right beside an airport, right?
I saw one claim of a near miss May last year. that forced the incoming craft to circle around and come back.
More recent than that, there was one 24 hours before.
Same airport.
Yeah, the thing about it is, that kind of stuff probably happens all the time. When they say near misses, if you look at the details of the near misses,
it's hundreds of feet.
We came within 300 feet of the aircraft, and it's like there's a big difference between 300 feet and actually hitting an aircraft.
Yeah,
specifically 300 feet.
Exactly.
But that's why they have that in place, because if you're like, that whole stretch of the Potomac around the airport, you're not allowed to go above 200 feet for this very reason.
Right.
As far south as that bridge.
Right.
Yeah. So that's what I don't quite understand about why they were flying so high, because I would imagine that it would be standard operating procedure to ride on the lower side of safe.
Well, that's what's so anomalous to me. The flight tracking of it, they say it had no transponder, but they could still glean the data from pings from the craft, show that it elevated up to 325 feet.
It was flying at 200.
It was at 200.
2 minutes before.
So it went up. It
increased in altitude. Now, the video we watched was only like about 5 seconds. So you're talking about, they say, less than 2 minutes. So probably you give it 2 minutes or a bit less than 2 minutes, whatever, before it elevated. So that would have been pretty far. That would have been up further north, right? That it raised up. They've also published. Would they have noticed
air traffic control transcript and recording? You can hear it. What presumably is the actual recording, and it's ATC communicating with PAC-25, which is codename for the helicopter.
Yeah.
And they're conversing normally right up until impact, I think, unless they left something out. And the last communication was, do you have the airplane and CRJ number in sight? Yes. Request visual separation, which term
supposedly that would have been right up until impact. That would have been at least a bit beforehand. So.
Well, there was, at least in the audio recording of this discussion that I came across, there was 2 incidences of it. There was the first one, which was before the helicopter had turned to basically go parallel to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, the air traffic controller said, by the way, there's, what was it? CRJ, was at 1,200 feet. Can you see it? And they acknowledge request visual separation, and then they continue on, and then it's still at 200 feet, and then it goes up to 300, and air traffic control again says, do you see it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, yeah, and then it's like 10 seconds later.
It's about, what, is that about right? 10 seconds?
It's close.
Something like that. Something short. That's bizarre. I mean, which is what prompted people to go, Jesus, he must have been looking. Yeah, I see it. And looking at the next plane in the queue.
But the thing was that, and that's where it gets me, is that he says that CRJ is at 1,200 feet. The one that was behind it was miles back in 20,000.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like it was like right behind it and
at the same altitude
and kind of hidden. Well, first of all, the one that hit was a CRJ. The second one was
both planes had
big one.
Both planes had their lights on, their landing lights on.
Yeah.
And the jet was smaller, so relatively smaller lights, but not significantly. And the other one was well behind it. So it's like imagine you're moving forwards. Slightly to your left of vision is the jet with a bigger, brighter light. And if you're at the right altitude, then it's slightly above you, so certainly you can see it. If you can see the one further away that's even higher, you know what I mean? So there has to be some ability to look out of a window of a helicopter and see what's in front of you. I think that's how it works, right? Whenever you're flying helicopters, you have to be able to see stuff, right? Out of like at least front, left, and right. So the jet would have been to the left and coming in to make a kind of slight left turn across the front of the path that the helicopter was on, and then the other one was more or less directly in front of it, or more centrally in front of it, and much further back. So there's no reason why both of those planes wouldn't have been within the immediate field of vision of the helicopter in front of it, basically. One slightly to the left, and the one to the left was closer, bigger lights. I don't know how you just don't see that. It doesn't make any sense. And then to fly more or less kind of like kind of straight into it. It's very strange, very strange. And it's not like this kind of thing doesn't happen. Literally, I know people are making a big deal about it over Washington DC with why there are helicopters in this area and all this kind of stuff. But when was the last time you heard of one aircraft flying into another aircraft right over an airport? Anybody? In the air, a mid-air collision.
Well, there are famously bad ones, which led to TCAS, the air collision warning system, becoming mandatory in all planes.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
A recent one since like in recent decades where they have all got TCAS.
Exactly. You
haven't.
I don't.
Maybe something in Kabul, but again, that would have been military or war situation.
Of all the maybe there is one somewhere, obviously in the annals of aviation. There's got to be one. But if you come into the relatively modern era, like in the last 50, 60, 70 years, I can't recall ever seeing any video since there's been video, or would have been video, let's say, or even news reports. Internet, since the internet, let's say, just to scale it back, in the last 20, 25 years, I don't think there has been ever a mid-air collision between two planes.
Okay, but that makes this all the more anomalous. So are we suspicious about what happened here?
You kind of have to be in a certain sense, especially coming with the one then 2 days later. And also, you can be suspicious. It's just pretty clear cut. Yeah, you go with, it was, just a horrible mistake, a terrible mistake. And DEI hires, if you want. Or... And then you just put it down to that and say it was just a very strange occurrence that, very anomalous, shouldn't have happened, hasn't happened before, and let's move on. Or you go, well, maybe there's something more to it here. So the other anomalous aspect of it that ties into the kind of continuity of government thing, and I kind of saw this on the day, was that there was part of, actually, tying directly into continuity of government business, is the present, and it is a bit weird. It's a Boeing E-4 Advanced Airborne Command Post aircraft, also called the Doomsday Plane. They serve as survivable mobile command posts for the National Command Authority, i.e. POTUS, and the Secretary of Defense and successors. So this is definitely, this plane is part of continuity of government in the event of a catastrophic event that is very, very, very bad for national security. But the weird thing about it is, I kind of noticed it. I think I saw it somewhere that it had arrived. Nobody paid much attention to it, but it arrived. You see on the map there, it left Omaha, where I think there's about 5 of these planes. They're stationed in Omaha and Offutt Air Force Base, and it arrived it left at 7:30, about approximately 7:24, and flew to Andrews Joint Base, Andrews Air Force Base, which is just south of DC. And that air base played a big role in 9/11 as well. So it arrived at about 2 hours later, about 9:24-25. So it arrived 20 some minutes after the collision. And people are like, well, that's just another coincidence, right? It just happened to be coming.
How often is that happening?
They rotate them around, maybe. Are you going to get that information? Who knows? That's not something that anybody would actually be that interested in, unless you're a plane enthusiast or something like that, But the strange thing about it is that it left there and arrived, like I said, about 25 minutes or so.
Could you check on Flight Radar, and they might have a recent history of what it's been doing, where it's been going?
There's 5 of them.
Oh, right, okay.
And they're stationed in Offutt Air Force Base. But anyway, I don't know. Them flying around, whatever, wouldn't be that interesting anyway, in a sense, because what's interesting, or what's potentially interesting or coincidental, is that it arrived. It was in the air, and not far actually from about half an hour out, or less than half an hour out from Reagan International Airport when the collision happened. Who knows? I don't know. It's all a bit weird.
Okay. Yeah. So there we are. We're just rummaging through this, trying to, it seems anomalous. It seems strange. And then Philadelphia.
Well, on the collision as well, what we didn't mention was just for the record, is that those helicopters. Black Hawk helicopters can be remotely controlled. That's an open secret. That's an open secret, and developed by DARPA. And DARPA is something that many conspiracy theorists are love to look into, and what defense intelligence, defense armaments research program, something. Anyway, but it was Lockheed Martin that actually makes Sikorsky. Sikorsky is a division of, has been bought by Lockheed Martin. I don't know how long ago. Sikorsky is the company that makes the Black Hawk helicopters, and Lockheed Martin owns them. And Lockheed Martin announced, they started a few years ago, 2022, I think, or they announced it officially 2022, the ability to remote control, put our remote control device. It's called a what's it called? Alias. I think it's called Alias or something like that. Yeah, Alias. Aircrew Labor In-Cockpit Automation System, developed by DARPA. It can... Why does that keep doing that? Visitors, so this is a couple of years ago, visitors and US Army senior leaders saw how a Black Hawk helicopter integrated with Sikorsky's Matrix autonomy system can receive remote mission commands in real time. And the guy was saying, this is somebody in Lockheed Martin. So let's say you have a Black Hawk flying in theatre, and you have troops on the ground that need an emergency medical evacuation or an event like that. They could send a message to the Black Hawk, and the Black Hawk could reroute automatically.
This was announced a few years ago, you said?
Yeah, 2022.
22.
But it's been in development for a long time before that.
There's an article here, defenseblog.com, from October just last year. Sikorsky to convert Black Hawk helicopter into drone. Maybe it's just an update, because indeed in the first paragraph it's about Lockheed Martin being awarded a $6 million DARPA contract to install, the term they use here is Advanced Alias/Matrix Flight Autonomy System. Same thing? Okay. Maybe just an update or something.
Well, that's the official contract, whatever. But they were doing a lot of testing for several years beforehand. Obviously, before they would actually start installing them in planes.
But in years past, this news item might have been like slam dunked. This is what happened. It was remote control. But the thing is, all craft, like in theory, can any car these days be remote hijacked? I've seen
certainly
techies show off that they can do that. No, not just souped up, e-vehicles that are, electronic up the wazoo.
Well, it's one of those,
any vehicle.
There's, I can't remember the specifics because it's been a while since I looked at it, but the OnStar system has something similar. OnStar is just basically it's a service that you pay for that, if you get in a crash, they'll automatically call you and say like, hey, are you okay? Do you need 911? But then it can also do other things, I think, including like unlocking your car doors and stuff. And so that kind of networked system has been in place for a while. Now, to what extent and all those things are things I don't know, but that system has been in place for a long time. So, if you want to talk about like, could it be one of the possibilities? Yeah. It's up there. The thing that gets me about it, with like looking at everything, it's like this person, the pilots, they seemingly can see this craft, and presumably the correct craft, because they were given coordinates for where it was, and they acknowledged it, and then they acknowledged it again, and there was no like chatter in terms of like if they were alive and in the craft and thinking that they were controlling it, and then somehow like lost control. There's no
confusion or alarm in either one. I have since heard that there's a suggestion that they can tell that the plane did its pitch turn, so it's on a downward. Its pitch turned slightly up at the very last second, so it did try to make a last minute maneuver. But yeah, we don't know if anything communicated. Like, oh no, did the plane pilot go crash?
No,
was that him? That was someone else observing it. Okay, maybe the ATC.
Yeah. That was after the fact. That was the ATC sending out their standard messaging to their emergency services there at the airport.
The silence then from pilots of each craft speaks to their surprise. But they literally don't have time to even go, what the f-? And then crash. They're just totally caught up by it. So again, that means your helicopter pilots, you've got to assume when they're talking to ATC, go, yeah, we see it. They don't. Or something else.
Yeah, and
it's
that's
one
exactly,
one or the other.
That was basically what I was getting at. It's like either it's gross incompetence on the part of the helicopter pilots who had run this mission numerous times, who had hundreds of hours under their belt, like had run this path numerous times in the dark, during the day, night vision goggles, all the things, and they just had a bad night, or maybe they weren't even like awake at the time of the flight, and whoever is sending the messages saying like, yeah, I see it, is not on that helicopter. Because if you can remote control the helicopter, I mean, can't you just like relay messages to the air traffic control through the thing as well?
Yeah,
that seems like nothing comparison.
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on when those last messages happened. What was it? Somebody said 10 seconds.
I just looked at the video again, and it's like 10 to 15 seconds before the actual collision.
So, but that's 10, 15 seconds. A lot can happen in 15 seconds, especially if you're already in close enough proximity, like that 300 feet. If getting within 300 feet of an aircraft is okay for these people and stuff like that, then certainly in 15 seconds you can probably crash into a plane, in the last minute. But and definitely, like you're saying, if you can, the remote control of an aircraft, if it has this kind of a system, if it had this kind of a system installed on it, then it's obviously it can be remote controlled and made to maneuver in any direction they wanted to. And also, you think that the suppression of maybe not relaying fake messages from the from the helicopter, although that's possible, but certainly suppression of the radio communication from that helicopter.
Well, yeah, either way, yeah.
So there we are, going along. It's suspicious, and then Philadelphia. We can go back to Washington as well. I must say, because maybe what makes the first all the more suspicious is what happened to the second.
Well, to me, what makes the first one suspicious is just the fact that it was in D.C. at the time of these confirmation hearings,
right,
when Trump is trying to get his
for sure.
his team in.
It certainly sends a message, even if, like, I mean, it wouldn't send a chill through people. Like, I mean, a lot of those members of Congress and stuff would have probably used those aircraft at some point in the past and stuff, and then to see one hit a plane, hit a jet, it's like, well, is it safe anymore to do this? Should we be doing these things anymore? You know.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can probably have, depending on, I mean, going with the covert message theory, the conspiracy theory, it's it's possible that insiders or whatever would convey to certain members of Congress, or members of the Senate, or whoever, that that it looks to give them more information about what actually happened. It looks like they could say that it looks like the helicopter was remotely controlled or whatever, and seed a bit of fear in them about
who to trust or whatever.
Yeah, well, about the reality that I'm sure they're all aware of. I mean, they're all definitely aware of the reality of a deep state and the fact that there's big parts of stuff that goes on within the country is beyond their purview. They don't have access to that. There is a power behind the throne in America. They're all, most of them, maybe not the newbies, but most of the old guard anyway, would have come across that at least. Either would be very, very familiar with it or would have heard about it. So that's the thing. You don't, most people don't realize it, and like politicians, they know them, obviously. They don't talk about it, but most people don't realize that it's very, very likely that a significant percentage of the members of Congress and the Senate are all aware and have been, depending on how long they've been in politics, or have been aware for quite a long time, that they're not the highest authority in the land, basically. They're not the highest power in the land. There are people behind the scenes. I mean, what do you call him? Chuck Schumer, more or less spelled it out there a few years ago, and he was talking to some media outlet, CNN or someone, and said, the CIA have 6 ways of Sunday at getting back. He's talking about Trump, basically. So he was basically saying, like, the CIA, in that interview, the CIA can act extrajudicially against the President of the United States if he crosses them. I mean, right there, you've got a full admission of, at least at the level of the intel agencies, that they are operating beyond the purview or beyond the oversight of Congress and the government, and can do things to the commander in chief and the office of the president and anybody therein if they feel they need to. So that effectively they're the ones who, when necessary, will come in and place a guiding hand on the direction that the country is going in if they think that it's going in wrong. They're the ultimate safeguarders of
the continuity of government.
Yeah, exactly. The continuity of them in their position of government, or the continuity of government in a particular direction. Yeah. If the government starts going in the wrong direction, then they're going to step in and do something, and it will be done covertly, and nobody will know anything about it. And there's nothing that anybody in Congress or the White House can do about it. So that's basically right there is evidence of a deep state. So they're all clearly very aware that this exists. Are they aware that it goes deeper than that, and that these kind of people are, really, off the leash type of thing, and they can for a very long time have been able to do whatever they want? And if you put yourself in the mindset of someone like that, and then they see this kind of a crash, this kind of a helicopter going down, and they read the signs, it's kind of like back in the day in the Roman Empire, when you would read the entrails,
the auspices,
read the augurs or the auspices. Yeah. Well, that's
augurs.
This is a modern version of that, where things happen, and if you're aware of the expanded reality, let's say, of how the government actually works, then an event like this, that most people, including most people on Twitter and in the world, are saying, DEI hire and it's crowded airspace and stuff, but if you're in the know, you're going to go, oh, okay.
When they're
key difference in the Roman Empire, the gods were the gods. In this scenario, the gods would be deep staters.
Same thing. Same level of power is what I'm saying.
Well,
they inspire the same level of awe and reverence and fear as the gods in the Roman Empire did.
But follow it through, though. The coincidence of timing with the confirmation hearings, the key ones, RFK Jr.,
day before,
Kash Patel,
RFK Jr.
Tulsi
day
Gabbard.
of.
Yeah.
Day of was RFK Jr. and day after was...
Is it done with a view to swaying
well, I mean,
Republican senators to
there's
not
a coincidence
confirm them?
there of various different factors that if, you'd have to kind of like, if you're, like I said, if you're kind of in the know, you would kind of set up and put two and two together, like, you would get the message,
I think it would be not to try and scare the Republican senators away from it.
No,
I think they've resigned themselves to this fact, at least given what like Tom Cotton and some of the other senators are. There's no issue of them not getting confirmed. It seems that this is just a message to them that you can have some of the stuff, you can have some things.
Don't be getting carried away with the MAGA business,
but
though.
Don't think that you control anything.
Yeah, don't think that this is all change.
Yeah,
and that the deep state has now been sidelined and Trump is in control and Trump can do whatever he wants and you guys can all get on board. It's just a reminder that we're still here, and here's an example, or here's a display of our power. Now that's the that's fleshing out the full conspiracy theory behind the idea. Because like I said, it's very clear cut. You either go with that or you go with crowded airspace, DEI higher, and you forget about it.
Yeah.
Philly,
yeah. So people might not have seen, this is a ground view. Ground view of the impact. So it happened right here on Cotman Avenue, Philadelphia.
And yep.
What's he shouting?
I don't know.
Mayday!
I tried to listen to that to figure out what he was saying. I think he was just freaking out.
Yeah, saving grace. Similar with DC. The DC craft was a smaller. It wasn't like a large passenger airliner. The saving grace here was a medevac Learjet. So there were 6 people on board, including the child. That's including the pilot. Yeah, it's weird. I'm starting to hear people talking about, it might have stalled, but unlike the Black Hawk, there's full data available on what it was doing. It was picking up speed and altitude. There's no lull. There's no drop off in altitude climb. Well, it did kind of plateau out before a bit, but its takeoff seemed to be fine.
Takeoff was fine, and it leveled out. And then what I was trying to research about how stalls happen, it's if the pitch is too high, but it had already leveled off. So if you're doing fine, then how does it suddenly...
Where did you get the information that it had already leveled off?
Just the visual data from Flight Radar 24. They put it onto a visual aid, so you could actually see how it goes. It takes off, it goes up, and then it just kind of like levels off for a bit, and then it just down.
Right.
So yeah, I just don't understand. I mean, maybe there's a way of it happening that I don't know because I'm not a pilot. I'm also not a biologist. So
yeah. So, well, it's in that report on the DC collision that system. I mean, there's other systems, uninterruptible aircraft, something. What's it called? That's from 9/11. Basically, it's been around for a long time. Remember talking about it back in the day. Yeah, uninterruptible autopilot. It's called. It was developed by Boeing actually back in the day. But basically, it was designed and it was developed before 9/11. was designed to deal with hijackings. Were because there had been quite a few hijackings in the
90s,
70s and 80s.
Earlier, so yeah.
And so the idea was, well, if your aircraft, one of the commercial aircraft gets hijacked, you can take control of it back by basically taking control of the plane via the, installing a module that basically allows aircraft to be remotely commandeered from the ground, or commandeered the autopilot system essentially. So then the would-be hijackers don't get to go where they want to go. So it's been around for a long time, and then also in this one on DC, the Lockheed Martin alias system, whatever, they mentioned that this can be and would be installed in other craft, including small lighter aircraft and jets, etc. So it can be installed in anything. My blink on the thingy is that it's it's possible. I mean, sure, maybe stall. I don't know. The plane had come from Florida that day, gone to Philly, was leaving Philly back to Missouri, and then was going on back to Tijuana. And there's something like I don't know how many years, a 45-year-old plane. It was an old plane, old small Learjet, but still, obviously airworthy and all that kind of stuff. And the guy obviously had flown twice that day already. Flown once that day already. Was on his second flight that day. Maybe there was going to be another flight later that evening from Missouri. So there was nothing wrong with the plane, apparently. Nothing wrong with the pilot, apparently. He knew how to fly a plane. It was a clear day. Relatively clear. It was cloudy. People were saying it was a bit cloudy, but whatever. It was
cloudy at 400 feet.
Right. There was no extreme weather. Anyway, that wouldn't really impact. It wasn't high enough for there to be ice, which is one of the causes of a stall. If you get ice in your wings, but it wasn't high enough to get. There's no ice, so it was at something like 1,600 feet. So ice wasn't a factor. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, and it's an old plane, came from Miami. Who knows? It's probably passed through multiple hands. You'd probably have to go to one of those websites. I haven't been able to do that yet, but find out what the actual tail number of it is, and go to one of those websites that tracks the history,
past ownership,
tracks the history and past ownership. Maybe it was, who knows in whose hands it was. Because you can imagine that, like those jets, private jets, they usually are jets and stuff. The CIA runs drugs out of Central America into Miami and that kind of stuff, into Florida, Puerto Rico and stuff, and
Arkansas,
and Arkansas and different places. And you can imagine that they use, they would probably want to have, depending on who's flying the plane, they might want to have that very sensitive cargo. They probably want to have some kind of a uninterruptible autopilot system on those planes. I would, if I was working for the CIA and running drugs, I would definitely want to have that. It's kind of the thing. It's the kind of thing that if you have access to it, you'd probably want to have it. Like, I mean, most people who have a car, in a certain sense, if there was, I mean, you're not going to do it with your car, maybe, but some people with very expensive cars might like to have that kind of thing on it. They have similar things where you can find your car and track your car and all that kind of stuff. If it gets stolen, but it's different with a plane, obviously. But even so, it would be. And I think maybe part of the systems that they have on some of those cars is that they can remotely stop them, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's almost like a kind of like an anti-hijacking system on a car, if you know what I mean. If someone steals your car, you can shut it down basically from a distance. Now on a plane, it's kind of different, where you wouldn't want to just shut the thing down, right? You wouldn't want to have the capacity to just turn off the engines remotely, right? Because then it'll crash out of the sky and all your cocaine goes all over the countryside, right? So instead, you'd want to be able to actually remotely. So unlike a car, you don't want to shut it down. In theory, in a car as well, you might want to, like, if someone steals your car, you might want to be able to track it and then see that it's headed, it's 100 miles from you west. You want to, like, okay, turn it around and drive it back to me, you know. But that's maybe overkill. You might not just want to stop it being stolen. But for a plane, it's very different, because obviously people on the plane, important things in the plane, you can't just stop it. So you have to actually be able to. You have to have much better remote control over it to be able to land it, take it back down, and land it and put it where you want it. So, just in terms of being consistent with the theme, I wouldn't be surprised if that plane had a remote autopilot system on it as well, and that it was hijacked
and deliberately crashed into Philadelphia.
Yeah. Just the law
for that scenario. Does it require that the aircraft's been physically prepared for that? or am I in techno la la land?
45
these days you can just basically hijack anything remotely.
No, I mean, well, who knows? But staying within the realm of known capabilities, yeah, you know, it's a relatively easy install. Like it's not a major system. Like, you know, I've seen it referred to as a module being installed in the electronics of the plane. You know,
yeah, it's a 45-year-old plane. No,
right.
There's no doubt that it's been through the retrofitted or
with all sorts of things. Yeah, I mean, it goes in for service all the time, and whoever owned it beforehand. This was a what do you call it? Some kind of a I had it here. It's a Mexican. Is it a Mexican company? Mexico-based company. Yeah. Was running it. I've seen some people on Twitter say that they're a bunch of crooks. that they took my money for
Mexico never. No.
But anyway,
we sell tacos.
It's called Jet Air Ambulance.
Yes,
Jet Air Ambulance. So who knows where they got it from? But certainly, I'd say it's not their. They haven't had it for all the life of the plane. They probably only had it recently. Those planes are passed around like.
We said the DC collision was
passed around like adrenochrome at a Joe Biden White House party.
The DC collision was a first, as far as we can tell, of a mid-air collision. Is there any precedent for what just happened in Philadelphia?
Yeah,
a plane coming down like a missile. I mean, such a missile.
No, well,
people thought it was a missile.
Well, that's the thing. That's the thing that stood out for me was that the speed at which it came down. You know, because the only thing people have on this is that it was a stall. It's the same as congested air traffic over DC and DIA higher. That explains the Black Hawk collision down away. And then you have this one, which is it was a stall, and you ultimately put it down to pilot error, where he pulled up too hard on the stick, and then you go into a kind of fatal kind of spin, let's say, or not even a fatal spin, but a turn. You basically, it stalls, and then you lose lift. And if you try to if you don't do it properly, if you don't correct properly, you can make it worse, basically, because the procedure is to put the nose, well, at least level or down, you know. But if you make a mistake and panic a little bit because you've
overcorrected,
you've lost lift because you've gone at too high a pitch or whatever, and you start to kind of like, you know, spiral out of the way, whatever. You try to push the nose back down to get back onto level flight, whatever, or you're doing different things, you can make it worse, and then you just kind of barrel into the ground. But you know, in the time it takes to do that, okay, they're 1,600 feet, that's not very high, but still, the videos I've seen and there have been, it's usually bigger commercial aircraft. I mean, there's a lot of them of small aircraft. Happens quite often with small, like Cessnas and prop aircraft, where we can go into a stall, and then there's all sorts of, you can watch videos, loads of videos about how to correct it and all that kind of stuff. It's very well known. And generally, there's probably been a few crashes as a result of that, but it's so well known at this point that anybody flying a plane has learned how to, you know, they go through the process of actually stalling the plane in order to see how you meant to correct
get out of it.
And that's the same for commercial pilots and on commercial planes or on cargo planes, whatever. But I've seen there's a few videos over the years of planes stalling. But generally speaking, it's I don't know, it's whatever procedure the pilot takes. I mean, the plane basically falls out of the sky. Do you know what I mean? It's not coming down like a rocket with the engines, as is the case in this Philadelphia case. It's not coming down like a rocket with its engines roaring.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So that's a bit strange to me. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but maybe because of the height, the guy was trying to correct by, you know, gunning the engines and trying to pull up on the stick to get it out of its descent or whatever. But it's
But as Adam pointed out, there's no apparent fall or stall in the gain that the craft is making at the speed it is. You know what I mean? There's no kind of in the intervals that are available on the flight radar data. They're all kind of consistent intervals, and the speed, altitude, and distance traveled are smooth. One interval to the next. There's no interval that makes you go, "Oh, that looked what happened there." He only made half the distance at the same speed or something, you know.
Yeah, it's strange because, like, I mean, you'd be taken off and you go into a stall because you have the engines at full power or close to full power, whatever, to take off, and you're going up, and so the engines are fully powered up, let's say, and you're taking off and you're up into the sky, whatever. At a certain point, you start to stall, and that doesn't mean the engines are still going. You just lost lift, right? Yeah. So then the engines are still going, but they're not basically. You've started to kind of like go into a kind of a spiral, you know. And if the engines are still at full speed, then in theory, if you just left it that way, you would end up going at full speed into the ground if you just kind of took your hands off the wheel, didn't try to do anything.
I wonder what happens if I do this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's a strange one, and I mean the strangest aspect of it. Of course, there's a way to explain it in the same way there is with the DC thing, but that's not the only way we're looking at it. We're looking at it from the perspective of the coincidence of the two events and the context in which they're happening, and what we know about the way things probably happen in
the murky
Washington
deep politics,
deep state.
Yeah. Well, thanks to the media, I was reminded that this the DC collision was the worst air accident in the US since 2001. There was something in 2009, but it wasn't as bad. I think the worst in terms of fatalities. You have to go back to 2001, and what was happening in the context there? It was 12th November 2001. I'd forgotten about it, or I wasn't even paying attention back in those days. Joe said to me when I mentioned it to him this week, he said, "Don't you remember?" I'm like, "No." I was fast asleep in those days. So it's 2 months and a day after 9/11. I made a post about it here to sum it up, but I also included the only known, this is pre, mass surveillance days. So there's one little grainy CCTV footage plus construction crew, which happened to film its takeoff. If you want to go ahead and play that video. No sound. This is apparently American Airlines flight to Dominican Republic, taking off in the morning, 9:15, 9:16. Doesn't look like daytime, but it is. It's AM. That's how shitty CCTV was in the day. And you see a streak in the sky. And then CCTV from Rockaway Peninsula, New York, in Queens, New York, where it slammed into. Now it's got water on either side of this narrow peninsula and went smack into a bunch of houses, killing several people on the ground. This is footage that's taken with a VCR. I think the time is wrong, but the date is right. It was more like 9:15 a.m. or earlier on taxiing for takeoff. But apparently that is confirmed. That was the actual plane. They just, construction guys, they just happened to film that one take off. Routine flight, nothing unusual. Pilot very experienced. Normal takeoff. Fine. In fact, they stopped filming at this point. And then the next bit of footage is taken by the same guys, is when they realize, holy shit, what's going on over there? I'm not even sure they were aware that that was the plane they'd been filming.
Mm-hmm.
Went down the fireball. Now, the official report, NSTB report on American Airlines Flight 587 is that the pilot overused rudder controls, causing the vertical stabilizer to fall off, which indeed happened. They picked up the stabilizer in the water north of Rockaway Peninsula. But then, I kid you not, the two engines did likewise. I think the theory was they got into such a spin that they sheared off. Maybe. They also then, tacked on that the pilot was inexperienced, but that, I don't know what they meant by that, but it was kind of insinuated in further reports. The NSTB never actually cited that as a reason. Yeah. It was spooky. Everyone at the time, obviously the National Transport Safety Bureau's report came out years later, but at the time, in the media and on the street, obviously people were going, this has got to be terror related. I mean, it's an American Airlines flight. It's just crashed into a bunch of houses. I'm presuming they didn't make a big deal out of it or have a backstory with, Allah Akbars on board who hijacked the plane, because they never ran with that.
No,
hence, it's been forgotten by most people. But it's 9/11 related, at least in time and context. So that's the last major mass fatality air accident in the United States. And here we are in 2025. And the context is Trump is president again, despite 8 years of Russiagate, assassination, lawfare, etc. against him. And it's hot in DC because he's trying to get 3 key people confirmed as cabinet ministers. Where do you want to start with that one, guys? First of all, general question: do you think all 3, Kash Patel for FBI, Tulsi Gabbard DNI, and RFK Jr. for HHS, are they all going to get it?
RFK and Kash for sure.
Kash for sure.
RFK and Kash for sure.
Right.
Well, not for sure, but most likely.
Right.
Tulsi, don't know, but probably.
I think so.
Yeah, that was my thought as well.
There was
They might bargain with him 2 for 1.
There was something, again, I think it was Tom Cotton who, and I didn't save it, unfortunately. Tom Cotton had been discussing all 3 of them actually, and was saying that they've got enough. Like 1 Republican flipped, 2 Republican flipped for somebody else, but regardless, they were going to have enough. This was within the last day or 2. This was what he was saying, was basically yes, a couple of Republicans, decided they weren't going to confirm, but that still it didn't matter because they were going to have enough.
Yeah, they got 3 extra, right? So up to 3 Republicans can say no. That's as happened with Pete Hegseth, and then JD Vance has the tying, because that would make it 50-50, and then JD Vance has the deciding vote. That's what he did with Pete Hegseth. So,
well, Meghan McCain has said that she is going to use all of her considerable power and influence to go after whoever doesn't confirm Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah. Isn't she weird?
Yeah.
McCain? Gabbard?
The daughter of...
She's turned recently in the past maybe few months or something like that. She's had a weird change of heart, but it's still weird to me, because her father must be turning in his grave, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mr. Bomb Iran. He would have hated to see Tulsi Gabbard in any position of authority in the government, So she's obviously just she
even said on
she
the
got no
View,
integrity, basically. Anyway.
In 2019, she was on the View, and Tulsi was there, and she told Tulsi, there on the View in front of all of America, when I hear Tulsi Gabbard, I just think Assad apologist.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, no longer.
They're so fickle, and
Tulsi's opening statement was gold. She was the most polished, I thought, of the 3 of them. At least in the beginning, before the questions got tough. It's a 10-minute monologue, but we won't try to play it all. I think what I've just sent Scotty is like 2 minutes. We forget it because we've been on the internet saying this for so long, but this is probably the first time this has been said on TV to a national audience.
Yeah.
About the rise of and background of Al Qaeda.
For too long, faulty, inadequate, or weaponized intelligence have led to costly failures and the undermining of our national security and God-given freedoms enshrined in the Constitution. The most obvious example of one of these failures is our invasion of Iraq based upon a total fabrication or complete failure of intelligence. This disastrous decision led to the deaths of tens of thousands of American soldiers, millions of people in the Middle East, mass migration, destabilization, and undermining of the security and stability of our European allies, the rise of ISIS, strengthening of Al Qaeda and other Islamist jihadist groups, and strengthening Iran.
She gave them Iran for good measure. But that is objectively the case. I mean, ever since the invasion of Iraq, Iran kind of came out of its shell and started to exert its influence, most for self-defense. But they obviously they must like loathe her with. Who is she giving a statement before? Is it like House Intelligence Committee?
Yes.
Probably some version of that. It doesn't matter. Those hearings are all a bit of a sham, like, you know. They're just for public consumption, really.
Yeah.
So, because, you know,
it's
obviously televised to the public, and they're doing it just to, I don't know, cover their asses, or I don't know what they hope to achieve by those, other than just, you know, so making it available to the American public or the global public, because it really has no bearing on
the senators. It's not like a court where the senators hear what's offered and then go, I'll decide my vote now.
No.
They've already decided their vote,
more or less, yeah.
And this is a show.
Yeah, for sure. It's like if you have a company, if you're the, you know, if you own a company or something, and you're employing someone, you want to employ someone for a position in your company.
Mm-hmm.
How do you go about it? Do you ask the person to come into your office for an interview, and maybe with you and maybe one other person or something, or whoever else is relevant to the job, and interview them and ask them pointed questions, face to face, in person, and then on the basis of that, and it can be a protracted interview, you make a decision based on whether or not they're useful for your company. Or B, do you say, okay, we're not going to have an interview in the normal way here. What we're going to do is we're going to go out to the front of the building, right? We're going to set up some tables and chairs. We're going to get a bunch of people from our company that some of them don't really have anything to do with the job that you're applying for, and I'm going to put them all there on a desk with me there in the middle, and then we're going to put you in a chair opposite us, and then we're going to announce it in the papers and get a lot of people to come over, or the public, to watch this happening, and then we're going to ask you a bunch of provocative questions that make for good TV.
Through a bullhorn.
Yeah, and on that basis, we're going to decide whether or not we'll employ you. I don't know. What would you go for? B? Yeah,
B.
You'd go for B, yeah. So it is obviously for sure. Because like all these people they know obviously who, they've done the research, they know who, if they didn't know, they know who RFK and Tulsi and the rest of them are. And they've also had an opportunity to talk to them if they wanted to. They had an opportunity for them to come into their offices and have those kind of private interviews and private conversations where they could ask particular questions that they maybe wouldn't want to ask in public, to get a better read on what the person is about and whether or not you think they're a good fit for government. So they've had an opportunity, and many of them did do that already in advance of these show trials.
Yeah.
But there's some merit to them in a certain sense. Like, you know, Tulsi gets to say that, you know, Obama or Biden or whoever was funding the CIA or funding Al Qaeda, etc., and the public gets to hear that, you know. But the politicians don't give a shit. Like, they're like, yeah, so whatever. Like, I mean, he basically had Tulsi Gabbard saying, like, you know, the US government has been funding Al Qaeda, in Syria. and the freaking suits up there, they should be shocked by that. You'd think they'd be shocked by that. I mean, you think the average American would be shocked by that.
The whole room should have gasped and collected.
How dare you say such a thing? What is your evidence for that? We defeated Al Qaeda. They attacked us in 9/11, and they're our mortal enemy. That's like
she actually gives her evidence in the speech.
Of course, but the thing is, they all know. They all know, or some of the, or the ones that don't know don't care. They're like, yeah. That's how shit happens in Washington, D.C. We fucking fund terrorists. Been doing it for years, man, whatever.
But instead, they're like, why are you repeating Russian disinformation?
Yeah, of course.
And
because someone probably believes that. Some of them are that stupid. I mean, at least in the RFK hearing, some of the people there who were asking him questions were like, oh my God. There's that one woman.
Black woman.
Elizabeth Warren.
Well, Pocahontas was another one.
Pocahontas was another one, yeah, but there was those two. There was the black woman who was horrified at RFK Jr. saying that there should be different vaccine schedules for people of different races. And she didn't say it explicitly, but she was clearly thinking, she said it was very dangerous for saying such a thing. And for suggesting that there is any differences from a, pharmacobiological perspective between different people of different skin color. How dare you say such a thing? Yes, but RFK is like, well, I'm just citing like a peer-reviewed study.
I thought this was the science.
Yeah. I thought this was the science. Did you not like the science? Is the science dangerous?
Is it racist?
She's like,
did he really retort with that?
Yeah,
that's a good one.
And and then this other woman, who was she? What was her name? I can't remember her name. The one who was saying that if we can't make progress,
the small one with black hair.
I don't know. If we can't make progress, she said, the problem is that science makes mistakes.
Oh yeah.
That's how we make progress. But if you keep undermining the science, then we can't make progress. That's literally what she said.
Crazy.
Just like, hang on a minute. He was like, say that again.
Oh, okay. Here it is.
We make progress through.
I've got it because this is great.
Through questioning the science, but because I question the science, we can't make what?
All right, let me.
The main takeaway from the hearings is that the IQ of the average senator is 90.
Huh?
The main takeaway from these hearings is that the IQ of the average senator is about 90.
Yeah. Well, or they're just
maybe lower.
They stay in their lane basically, and they have no idea.
And they just use it as a platform.
Yeah. This one.
Because sometimes science is wrong. We make progress. We build on the work, and we become more successful. And when you continue to sow doubt about settled science, it makes it impossible for us to move forward.
She has literally no idea what she's talking about. She's basically saying, like, settled science. There's settled science, right? You start off with some settled science, but then you find out that the science is wrong. And that's how we make progress and build on that work. But if you keep questioning the science in the same way that others question it in order to progress, but if you do it, we won't be able to make progress because you're the one who's doing the questioning rather than somebody else, apparently.
You inadvertently made it correct in your statement just then. You're saying there's...
No, what I'm saying is that there's no difference. Like, I mean, she's saying you start with settled science. She didn't say this explicitly, but you have to assume she's saying you start with settled science, then you find out that it's made a mistake, and then you go, okay, let's correct it, and that's how we progress. But the problem is that you, RFK Jr., are questioning the settled science, and in doing that, we can't make progress. And he's like, but you just said that questioning, more or less, you just said that questioning the science is how you make progress. Or if you find out, question the science, find out if there are any mistakes, then make progress. Like, no, shut up. It's only when you do it that it's wrong.
And
my time's up. I'm going to submit shit to the record.
Yeah.
The perfect example where he was talking about the amyloid plaque, and it's like, it was settled science for 20 years. The NIH spent, however many millions upon millions of dollars funding 800 studies on this theory that was wrong. And so we just wasted tons of money and tons of time on something that we thought we knew. And we were wrong, And there was probably and that was the other thing, is that they wouldn't allow for any other theory to come forward during that time.
Right.
So there was,
because they had a pill.
Yeah.
Based on their research, and they didn't want to waste the money. They're like, oh shit, all that work, all that money we put into all that work for this pill, we found out that's wrong. Well,
carry on.
Let's not say anything. Let's show me that. Where's that paper? Where's that study you said shows that it's wrong?
Burn it.
Burn it. Give it to me. I'll keep it. Now,
just want to look it over.
Get out there and start selling those pills. Yeah, that's how it works. So, but it's just ignorance. So, I mean, yeah, looking at those, one thing that those hearings, confirmation hearings, made me painfully aware of was that the deep state has nothing to concern itself about. Has no worries about anybody, probably most members of Congress, ever having the brain power to figure out that there is a deep state or even care enough to do anything about it. It's only a few, so.
The other good one, well, there was a couple of other good things about RFK Jr.'s hearing. Number one was him slipping a nicotine pouch during the hearing.
He what?
He slipped a nicotine pouch into his gum.
Oh, like Tucker.
Yeah,
he likes those.
Yeah. It's actually the same, because Tucker has his own nicotine pouch company now. And the company put it on their Twitter, the video of him slipping it in there, and he just he does this from.
I'm not surprised to learn he's a smoker. I mean, not in quotes.
Yeah,
a nicotine infuser, because for someone like him to be able to live in that world,
well, he's read the studies.
He probably knows. Yeah,
he likes to read studies,
So, in line with what you're saying about that all being performative theater, the omens then would be good for Tulsi. Because, in Matt Gaetz' case, they didn't even let him get to this point. So he was kicked out in the proper interviewing stage.
There's a bunch of horse trading goes on in the background between the Republicans, Trump's MAGA people, and other Republicans. Because it's mainly the Republicans, because they don't care about the Democrats.
No,
they just need to make sure that all but three, at a minimum, Republicans are okay with it, and so any Republicans would use it basically as leverage. That's what it is. It's got nothing to do with whether or not she's right for the job or wrong for the job, whether I think she's good or bad. It's about what they can use. So Trump's people comes to those Republican members of Congress or the Senate and says, "So you're going to vote for Tulsi?" And they're like, "Well, maybe." I'm not sure
what can I get out of it.
What's it worth to you?
Yeah,
that's what works.
And or, what areas is she going to look into? There are certain things she cannot. Can we get your commitment that she won't? Stuff like that. And that's probably all done beforehand. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
The one thing about people,
it's how you run the government.
I've been asked about what is this DNI position. People don't know, but on paper, it's key. The DNI is the last person that all the intelligence is collected to, that forms the briefs, the daily briefs that go to the president. On paper, it's always been important. You never knew that because the DNI just stamped everything that came by before now, and whatever is coming from upstairs, off it goes to the White House. This is exactly the picture of reality that's going on out there. Yes, Mr. President, this is exactly. But now you're going to have someone who will actually actuate the role, and they're shitting themselves, kind of like Trump. No, you can't actually be the president, but that's what it says on paper.
Yeah, although it's. I mean, it's better. It'd be good if she's in because she will be able to. I think she's smart enough to kind of look. She'll be interested in the intelligence and be able to interpret it and kind of critically correct it from the CIA's general thrust, let's say, which is usually bullshit and lies and making stuff up. But Trump, that's why Chuck Schumer said that there's CIA has 6 ways of Sunday getting back at. He said it in reference to Trump and his first administration. Doing away with the daily morning intelligence briefing. Yes. He was like, the first thing the president does every morning when he gets up has done for decades, right back to Sauron, the first US president. He said he gets up in the morning and he receives the intelligence brief, the daily intelligence briefing from the CIA, and it's very important that the president maintains a good relationship with the CIA and reads these briefings and takes them on board, etc., etc. And Trump was like, nah. I don't want to do that. So
his instincts were good because he
knew
the
intelligence briefings. I don't want to do them. I'm going to have a Diet Coke instead.
He knew he would be bullshit. His instincts were good.
Yeah.
And what happened within a day or two of that? Breaking news: General Mike Flynn contacted the Russian ambassador, and so begins Russiagate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So 6 weeks from Sunday. That was one of the 6
That
ways.
was the way they nixed him ever reaching this stage of Senate confirmation hearings to be his national security advisor.
Right.
But this time he's smarter.
Right.
He's got, okay, this job's important. Right, I want her in it.
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, no. Okay, he's taking it seriously this time. Damn it.
Yeah.
He was warned, you can't not take this seriously last time. So he goes, okay, I'll take it seriously. Tulsi Gabbard.
No,
you
said I get to pick.
But he'll still diss their, he'll do that officially, but he'll still be dissing the CIA's general policy, you know what I mean? General policy briefings. Because they won't change, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's part of it. That's the head of the swamp type thing, you know. So they'll still be pushing bullshit on him and trying to lie to him and lie him into wars and all that kind of stuff. Speaking of wars, did you see he did a bit of bombing there recently?
Oh, Somalia.
In the middle of all this, yeah. What's that about?
Like a bit of bombing, like. The short version is that it was ISIS, right? So ISIS, good catch-all. The same ISIS we were kind of funding and airlifting for.
Is this ISIS K, ISIS B, C?
ISIS in Somalia.
ISIS Somaliland. So Somaliland is part of Somalia. It's a kind of breakaway, supposedly. It's basically, you're into geopolitics here. Basically on the Horn of Africa, looking right across at Aden, across the Gulf of Aden at Yemen, and Chinese have been in Somalia for quite a long time. Russians too. Israelis opening. I think Israelis are opening or have opened. Not open, but they're in a port. They're developing facilities in a port there called Berbera, I think, on the right on the coast, looking across at Aden at Yemen in Somaliland, and there's various different factions that are, you know, different groups that, you know, it's basically a proxy war, like using different armed groups to try and different great power politics in Africa, basically, because, well, the Israelis are interested, the Americans are interested in controlling the, because it's right close to the mouth of the Red Sea, and then on up to the Suez Canal. So that area is geopolitically sensitive and that kind of stuff. The Israelis are want to, you know, contain the Iranian threat, right, which it comes through the Houthis in Yemen and stuff. So it was basically undercover, claiming it was ISIS, the US military kind of firing a few missiles at opposition groups who are funded probably by China, Iran, Russia, whatever. So geopolitics, basically.
Right. So they
scramble for Africa.
So they would not then
in the current
have
context
been black flag waving head choppers per se.
No, there's no ISIS.
There is no ISIS. Okay, because I did a quick search on it, and apparently the group that's in most control of the state formerly known as Somalia is Al-Shabaab. Remember them? There was a time when they were the black flag waving ISIS in Somalia. Yeah. But apparently now they're the main local power, and they were more than happy because they've been fighting directly against this group that Trump says were ISIS.
Right. Yeah, it's all about murky, and ISIS is a good coverall. Supposedly it was a high-value target, according to Trump. Didn't actually say his name, so no name to this high-value target. We killed an ISIS high-value target.
In a cave.
Yeah,
they were all in a cave, and no civilians are killed.
Yeah, in a cave in the Golis Mountains, which is just off the coast there, behind that port of Berbera. So similar to, you know, Taliban in the mountains of Afghanistan, etc., or Al Qaeda in the mountains of Afghanistan. And been doing it for years. Like, the Americans have been bombing that for years, right back to under Bush, actually.
Under Clinton.
Bush, Obama.
I remember
Trump.
Clinton.
Yeah, bombing
Somalia.
So it's been.
It seems to be the first thing every incoming president does: bomb Somalia.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What are we doing today? Bomb Somalia.
I got to get warmed up. Who will we pick?
So supposedly an anonymous Somali official said the only local confirmation of the strike comes from one unnamed source within the Somali government. So very murky, very little information about it. All we get is that Trump fired missiles at ISIS in Somalia and hit a very high value target who I don't have his name, Mohammed bin Hayden.
I love how all the first media reports about it were like breaking news. Trump orders airstrikes against ISIS in Somalia. And then you read the reports. There isn't a single... The report was Trump's post on Truth Social.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which they just dissected and stretched out into 5 paragraphs.
Yeah.
Which ends with him saying the message to ISIS and all others who would attack America is that we will find you and we will kill you.
Yeah, Trump was droning in his first term. He it was something like 200 drone strikes on Somalia in his first term. So it's basically about foreign powers carving up Somalia for their own interests. Same as Iraq, Syria, Libya. UAE actually is directly involved in there as well. So it's a whole Middle East power grab, especially, but it's same old, basically. It maybe come to a head, whatever. The UAE actually is the one that has been heavily investing in Somaliland's Berbera port, which is a kind of Red Sea, like kind of choke point, So it's basically about control over the Red Sea, with Israeli, Iran interests in mind, I guess. So, and other than that, Trump's been tariffing everybody. Tariffs have gone live. You enjoying the tariffs, Adam?
It's true.
Yeah, you liking them? Like me some tariffs?
I'm going to tear off a piece of that tariff.
I'm going to tear off someone.
Yes. He's been going seriously.
So far we've got Mexico, Canada, 25%, China, 10%. Has there been any more?
Yes. Europe's going to be huge. That hasn't happened yet, but it's going to be huge on Europe. It's going to tariff Europe up the wazoo.
Ooh.
Taiwanese chips and pharmaceuticals. It's like he's starting with, okay, who are our closest allies? Right.
Piss them all off first.
He, in his speech at some institute, Trump announces the US will be placing tariffs on all semiconductors and pharmaceuticals imported from Taiwan in the very near future. So that's not official yet. But in the same speech, this is where the one where he says he still wants to abolish the income tax. And the two go hand in hand. I mean, if you abolish the income tax, well, then you need to get the income for US government from tariffs.
Huge tariffs.
Mm-hmm.
The 25% one on Mexico and Canada, is that like with immediate effect? Because if so, things are going to get rocky everywhere. And the EU, is the EU like something he's threatening?
He's going to do it. Or so he says. And they're going to be huge.
He was coy about it. It wasn't clear, but he was definitely insinuating they could be next. There was some other statement separately how he wants to no longer deal with the EU but deal with European nation states on a bilateral one-to-one basis.
Yeah, he's breaking up the
EU basically.
He's breaking up the world order.
And once again, we laughed at it 2 months ago. His post on 100% tariffs against any BRICS countries, starting an alternative currency to the dollar. He's doubled down and said, yes, reiterated his threat.
On Friday, Trump said that he will absolutely impose tariffs on the EU.
Okay.
So it wasn't much of an it wasn't exactly
subtle,
yeah.
You can't keep up with him. Like, over here, he says, yeah, maybe, and then he tweets like all caps. What did I say? 25% yesterday? I meant 75%.
Here's an example of the value of all U.S. imported goods in U.S. dollars by country. Biggest being Mexico, no surprise there. Then China, then Canada, then Germany, Japan, Vietnam, South Korea, Taiwan, And then little old Ireland, 6 million people, 95 billion in imported goods from Ireland, which sits 15 billion above India, which happens to have, I think it's 6 million, so it'll be 1,000 times. How many times does 6 million go into 1.5 billion? Where's my calculator?
A lot.
I don't understand.
200?
How does Ireland send $100 billion worth of produce into the United States?
15 million, 150 million divided by 6.
Well, presumably that's like what?
So
that
250 times the population of Ireland, but they import more from Ireland than they do from India. Huh?
How does Ireland export $100 billion?
Because Ireland is little America, don't you know?
But that's not actual goods. That figure is funny money, right? That's
No,
like
it's
the
real- it's real
profits of
goods.
Apple coming back.
No, it's real goods. It's actually
what? Meat?
no
Guinness?
Computers.
no. Actually, it's mostly pharma. America gets
Drugs.
a lot of its pharmaceutical companies or pharmaceutical drugs from Ireland, which is it's a deal made basically where.
But they're American companies.
They are American companies, yeah. It's basically for tax avoidance or paying lower tax. Ireland gets quite a lot of tax from those companies, paying corporate tax, and obviously the people that they employ. Problem is that a lot of the research for those drugs would be done in America by that company in America, and then the research is sent to and costs quite a bit of money for pharmaceutical research. It's a big part of their budget, so that's done in America. But then, and then that research is sent over to Ireland where they're manufactured, and then the drugs are manufactured, and then the drugs are bought by America from Ireland, and the company pays. It actually includes the expenditure of research that it actually did in America, as if it. In terms of its costs in Ireland, so it taxes it all, domiciles it all in Ireland, which is obviously a way to avoid paying American tax and paying a lower tax rate in Ireland. So that's something that Trump's pissed off about. So he's gonna
try to repatriate those.
Well, that's the whole point of all this tariffs, to try and stimulate production of a lot of these different goods
at home for American jobs.
In America for American jobs, And in the meantime, obviously, it's going to drive up prices because if you tariff or tax products from other countries coming into America, then most often it seems what happens is that the companies will pass that on to the consumer. So the price of goods in the US, depending on the sector, will go up.
But the theory is they'll go up for a while, but come down in time, in years, a couple of years, 2 years.
Yeah, that's the theory. We'll see. There hasn't been something like this before where you have this. If it gathers speed and goes on full on, trade war basically, tariff war between countries. I mean, the outcome of it in the current global setup and the way things have been operating for quite a long time is just very unknown. But he'd probably wreck it all,
because in his,
he'd wreck the whole place.
Trump, references the 1900s, like the early 1900s and the late 1800s, and how using tariffs
the best time ever.
Tariffs made America great, but like you're pointing out, back then there wasn't an American company sending all of its stuff to Ireland to send things back here for convoluted tax purposes. And those more simple times, anything that you would be getting from Ireland was basically something that was sourced, made.
Yeah.
In Ireland.
That we couldn't get here.
So, yeah.
It's not even that. It's like, it's not even that you can't get here, but you make trade agreements with each other type thing where technically you can get that here, but, just for friendly relations, all that kind of stuff, and you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, you try and work it out where you buy some of my stuff, I buy some of your stuff. Technically, we can maybe some of it. Obviously, we can't get, and we can't make ourselves or get it sourced from our own countries. But like Kerrygold butter, for example, Irish Kerrygold butter. There's plenty of cows in America, and they don't need Kerrygold butter. But it's like we'll sell you Kerrygold butter because Americans, it comes with the essence of leprechauns and stuff in it. So it's like Americans like it, and then Ireland buys Ireland buys some of American products in return. But then over time, as this is Trump's complaint, is that over time that starts to get abused, where other countries are selling way more of their products into our country and not buying anywhere near enough of ours. And that's hurting our economy, and therefore I'm going to correct that.
Yes, he keeps talking about the deficit.
Yeah.
Deficit. He means the deficit, the trade deficit, which means we're imbalanced, and Canada and Mexico, for example, I want to reduce their deficit, and people are like, what does he mean by that? He understands it well. He's not just.
It's very basic.
It is basic.
It's very basic economics, like, in a sense, but that's been something that's been accepted and tolerated by previous, U.S. governments, administrations all along, and it's really, I mean, the reason it's imbalanced. It is imbalanced. Trump is right that it's imbalanced in a world where every country is fighting for its own interests and is largely kind of like just its own country type thing, and they're competing in the global marketplace with other countries. It is imbalanced. It's like, how the fuck did we get here where we're buying so much of the world's products, and they're not buying enough of ours? But it's not imbalanced. It's completely understandable, and the reasons it has happened are completely understandable in the context of American empire, because, like, the phrase I've used before is American imperial outreach. Empires have to be maintained. You have to maintain not just good relations, but you have to keep your vassals, which is effectively what most other countries in the world are to America. They're vassals to one extent or another, and you need to keep them sweet. Basically, you need to, and it's not about keeping them sweet, but it's about it's about an exchange. If you're, as an empire, like, you don't just. America has to some extent gone around and just dominated other countries and invaded them and that, but a lot of it has been soft power, diplomatic power, and that kind of stuff, where they get access to that country and they get control over that country politically and socially to a large extent, and culturally or whatever. And in return for that, they need to give something back. You can't just. It's not a completely kind of my way or the highway kind of empire, because that's a different type of empire, and it doesn't usually last that long. But a more sustainable empire is one where you take over different countries and make them your vassals, basically, by doing good things for them in exchange for them selling out their own independence and liberty, basically.
Yes, you effectively run their government at a distance.
Yeah. And you have to pay. You have to pay for
then
that.
You become responsible for
exactly, for all sorts
paying
of
their pensions / making sure there's food on the table for everyone.
And that's why one of the biggest deals in a certain sense was them cutting off all foreign aid. They're suspending all foreign aid, right? And apparently the USAID website, or is it the NED website? They're all
USAID website
is down, and like the National Endowment for Democracy, which is more or less the same thing. I mean, the extent to which people don't have no idea the extent to which those organizations, those supposed NGOs, well, they're not really NGOs, American State Department tools or instruments, have like done what I've just said, which is dominate, take over, and control and subvert essentially other countries' political systems and social life and civil life, all that kind of stuff. Civil society. I mean, USAID and NED. Like there's stuff like particularly in not particularly in the Balkans, like it's many different countries, but the Balkans is one example where like in you can pick any country you want in the Balkans really to look at the USAID or NED websites and the kind of projects that they fund in those countries. They're funding stuff like they're funding media for sure, which is obviously a massive subversion of your independence. But also stuff like school camps and stuff like not Boy Scouts, but like camps,
summer
camps, that kind of thing. Rape crisis centers. They're also building houses in countries like North Macedonia and Croatia and Serbia. And this is the American government. They're building houses in other countries. They're funding rape crisis centers in other countries. And that's just one small example of them doing it all across the world. And that's the extent of the infiltration of the American empire into all these other countries. And the fact now that funding and those projects and operations are all being cut off from money. I mean, there's a lot of jobs that were being financed as well. You're employing people in those countries. So a lot of those groups are now all kind of freaking out and they're waiting to see if it's going to be a permanent thing, because the idea was that, according to Trump, it's like we're cutting it all off so we can review it to see which ones are actually worth doing and which ones aren't actually worth doing. So they're all kind of like praying to...
and lobbying. Imagine the phones going off.
Yeah.
I've heard Max Blumenthal say that something like 80% of media websites in Ukraine have gone down because there was completely a US State Department op.
For sure, Ukraine, but it's many different countries,
and many things that would surprise you.
It's crazy. It's like right down to the level, like I said, of building houses, funding all sorts of civil society, different things that you would expect the local government, any local government, to actually be funding. This is an indigenous kind of thing, right? Like your rape crisis center in the capital of North Macedonia, right? That's funded by the government, right? No, that'll be funded by the American taxpayer.
Mad. It's amazing what's coming out.
So you pull back from that, and then you start a trade war on top of it and all that kind of stuff. You're picking apart the threads of the global order that everybody has lived in and grown up in, and we've all grown up in it, like fish in water. We didn't even know about it until a while ago, but most people still don't know it, and it's you can't do that without. Like I think I've said this the past couple of shows. I think the chances, there's a good chance that it's all going to go pear-shaped. It's all going to go tits up.
I always knew Israel's free healthcare system was totally US funded. But say, for example, France's.
Yeah.
The US government subsidize that?
Mm-hmm. And
we may learn that.
There's all sorts of ways that it can be subsidized as well. I mean, with it not being technically directly and stuff. And we start looking into the economics of it and stuff. Trump would say that we're subsidizing all these countries' governments that we're running a deficit with. We're funding those countries. Mm-hmm. We're funding those governments. If one country has a $500 billion deficit with us, where they're selling $500 billion of their goods to us more than they're taking from us, then that's a massive amount of government receipts, government tax receipts that are coming directly from that are being taken from America, from the American taxpayer. It's taken from American coffers and being given indirectly to these other countries by allowing this kind of it's like America. Trump would see America as a big fat sow, right? With 200 different teats. And every other country is a little piglet. And they're sucking at the teat of it. And it's like the big fat cow goes, hang on a minute. What's this about? It's like, I know a sow wouldn't necessarily do that because, that you have to have maternal instinct. But Trump isn't a woman. He doesn't have maternal instinct. And he's like, I'm not a big fat sow. Even though I might look like one, I'm not a big fat sow. And this is stopping. This is not happening. We're not feeding the world anymore. And it's like, yeah, that's okay. But you need to take a bit of responsibility for the fact that this current world order that you're lamenting right now was created by your forebears.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And created, for self-interest, for American self-interest. It just depends on what your ideology is. They were doing it because domination and control of the globe was good for America, just in and of itself. It was domination and empire for empire's own sake. It wasn't necessarily to, they would say that it was to spread freedom and democracy and world order and all that kind of stuff, but that's just a narrative to justify what they were getting out of it, which was just control and domination. And it's been working, power. They have the petrodollar, so they can print funny money up the wazoo forever. They can just keep printing money, and the dollar is a world reserve currency, so as far as they were concerned, it was sustainable. Look at, like, Trump's complaining about it, but have Americans suffering? Have they suffered over the past? Like this empire has been built since the Second World War. As it was being built and leveraged and implemented over those 80 years since then, America went from strength to strength. It didn't suffer. If it was a really bad idea, America would have started suffering very quickly. Obviously, America was getting a lot out of it and maintained its global hegemony on the basis of expanding its empire. The problem right now, Trump wouldn't be doing what he's doing right now if it wasn't for Russia and China and BRICS and multipolarity. They had the idea that America would continue to rule the world in perpetuity, after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the Soviet Union and all that kind of stuff. They were going to just keep going, and it was the end of history, and this was going to be it forever. America ruling the world, and everybody just saying thank you and asking for some
handouts,
and they figured that's a good model. We can do that, But then the Chinese, and particularly the Russians, came along and had this silly idea that they wanted to be independent. And it's like, dude, don't you realize independence? That's so like fucking 19th century. That's not what we do anymore. It's a global world. We're globalists. You know what global means? Well, somebody has it's a globe.
Yeah.
And we're the globalists. We want to impose a global system, and somebody's got to rule it, and it's going to be us because we're right here doing it.
And there's a place on the table for you Russians. In the 90s, they were all friendly. Come on in. But you've got to be globalists.
Yeah, but globalists meant
but
being
the Russians
subservient.
were like, no.
It means open up your oil fields and all your natural resources to America.
Yeah.
So the Russians were like, nah, we're going to do the whole, independence thing. We're going to be, we can do it. So it's all that then the project for the new American century no longer is tenable anymore. And the writing is increasingly clear on the wall. And so Trump sees that and starts complaining about how we're being abused and it's not fair, and we're going to start playing hardball with tariffs, blah blah blah. And he was only doing that. I don't think he's doing it.
Well, wait,
he might be doing it ideologically in a certain sense, but he's realizing that the chickens are coming home to roost, where America's hegemony is no longer tenable because of Russia and China and what they've been doing on the world stage.
Isn't it more likely though that he was seeing the effects in the United States of that, what was happening abroad? And that's what prompted him to react, and then to start to rally Americans, we need a serious change. And they agreed with him, because Americans weren't going, oh, good God, multipolarity is coming in 2015. We need to vote for Trump. He's the man. He'll stop the Russians and Chinese. That wasn't in their mind. They were looking at their internal situation and going, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah,
here?
It was getting, there were downsides to it, obviously, in terms of, but I mean, to what extent does immigration actually have to be a function of that kind of empire? I don't know. Yes, it probably is, generally speaking, because, you need workers and all that kind of stuff for the whole H-1B visa, all that kind of stuff. By definition, when you have a global empire, you're going to have workers coming from the
outliers.
Not the outliers, but yeah, basically your vassals in around the world are going to want to come to your country, especially if you're an economic powerhouse. They're going to want to come there, and then if it suits your economic policies to bring in cheaper, like the whole story of cheaper immigrant workers, all that kind of stuff, that caused it degrades cultural values. Basically, it started to degrade cultural values and the culture in America. Whenever you take any large number of immigrants from another, of different race, different ethnicity, different culture, bring them into a country that has or had a homogenous, particularly, a homogenous, more or less, religious beliefs and cultural beliefs and all that kind of stuff. Well, you're going to have a backlash then from the people, So Trump definitely got on that, but that's one of the downsides of empire. And that's why they were pushing so hard to try and convince people that diversity is our strength and all that kind of stuff, blah, 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 because it's a function
sustain.
It's a function of empire. You have to get the people on board. They were trying to push back against the American people and nationalists everywhere who were suffering from this invasion as a result of empire. They were trying to push back against them and shame them as being Nazis and racists and all that kind of stuff. But what changed?
Well, what changed then? If that was always the case for 80 years, sure, I think the rate, it accelerated.
Yeah.
Such that when I was looking for videos of the plane crash in Philadelphia, all the guys on the ground level, one of them literally goes, Allahu Akbar. And he's speaking in Arabic. He was just exclaiming, "Oh my God!" But he was Arabic and speaking in Arabic, presumably to others on his stream or whatever. Another guy was Spanish.
Yeah.
Another guy who was first to arrive and actually show footage of that it was a medevac plane was speaking Portuguese, presumably from Brazil. Like, they're in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
They don't speak English.
That's it.
So it's the rate of change and the structural forces that were self-perpetuating, that were bringing more and more H-1Bs and others. It was getting too much, and the people were the nativists, right, were going, okay, what the fuck? And they were seeing the symptoms, and they reacted, and they said, Trump, you're going to Washington, you're going to throw a Molotov cocktail on these people. Wake them up, slap them around if you have to.
Right, but
and here we are.
Right. But that's an example of, like, I mean, America has been sustaining its empire on the basis of resources, human and other, from around the world, from around the empire. So by definition, you're going to have population from those countries in your country. You know what I mean? To as your own economy grows, you don't have, and you're also, you know, maybe you don't have enough workers, so you have to bring them in from elsewhere. But also, in order to maximize profits and all that kind of stuff, you need to bring in cheaper labor. So where are you going to get cheaper labor? Well, you're going to get it from poorer countries that are under your influence, your imperial influence. So you're going to bring them in. So it's just a function of, it's an unavoidable function of the American empire. But
here's another.
It also reaches a tipping point, you know, where you can have a certain amount of people, of immigrants coming into a country, more and more, and people, the indigenous population, will notice it, going, it's a bit dodgy, you know. But then it kind of unbeknownst to them in a certain sense, or if they don't stop it early, basically, is what I'm saying, then it reaches a point where suddenly it's an issue. But by the time it's suddenly a big issue where a lot of people are complaining about it, because you can quash the initial complainers about it and shut them down as racist and stuff.
The Tea Party movement.
Right. But once it gets to the point where a lot of people are complaining about it, it's too late. Because by definition, that implies that there's a shitload of fucking immigrants in your country. And it's like, what are you going to do? We've got a big problem now.
Did you see the videos of the... Apparently it's a thing on TikTok at the moment. People are going around Walmart filming the stores.
Oh yeah.
I saw a woman do that. There were some people complaining. She was saying that's because there's no immigrants because they're all hiding from ICE, right? But someone was pointing at that particular video, the same one you're talking about. The butchery, not the butchery, the delicatessen, that part of the fresh meat part of the store. The lights were off in it, so someone was saying, like, this is obviously done either late at night or on a weekend or something like that. You know what I mean? When it's closed anyway. So it's, I mean, who knows? I mean, there's probably some truth to it, but
well, because at least she was saying that normally at that time
it's full of Latinos.
It's full of,
but
Latinos.
Now they're all hiding.
Yeah.
So
it's hard to say, like,
it's probably to some extent.
You know, true, because
but not like that every Walmart or that Walmart in her area was 90% serviced by immigrants. Maybe, but I don't think so.
If it was in like New Mexico or something.
Here's another...
maybe.
This developed as a pattern, so it's now structural, but this was a function of said empire. Mike Benz has given a few like case studies of it. One is Somalia, in fact. Somalia has had a lot of migrants go to the US. This is almost predictable. From the moment you start bombing a country, it's going to start. The US now has a lot of Iraqis, Palestinians, and other Arabs in Detroit, Michigan, among other places. Such that today there are Somali-born members of Congress.
Yeah.
Omar, right? Well, he said Omar is interesting, but if you look at all the other people that came with her, maybe directly related, like family, but just at the time period in the 90s, CIA / state were selectively picking people, handpicking cadres of people over there, so that when they came here, they would either have their education paid for and then go into programs where they would be, like, for example, opposition activists or potential governments in exile for a regime change if needed, back over there for later management. This was going on all over the place.
Yeah.
You know, that's another draw, to pull them in, get them ready, and then to go back and manage that territory if it falls out of line and goes pro-Moscow or pro-Beijing at any point. You know?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you go into a country and you take it over in one way or another, like through direct invasion or through, bombing it or whatever, or funding, rebel groups to overthrow the government and stuff, and then you capture it, for whatever reasons, economic reasons, resources, but you also want to stay there. Then you start putting in USAID and NED and stuff, starts putting programs in there, open society, civil society, all that kind of stuff, start teaching them English, all that kind of stuff. Well, eventually some of them are going to want to come back to America. You're actually encouraging that in them, in these countries that you invade and occupy and turn into vassal states. You're going to want them to come to America, like you were just saying. You're going to want a certain cadre of those people to come to America to represent your interests as an empire in that country, but in your own country. Represent America's interests in, not necessarily in government necessarily, but in society in general. You want to have a little section of each of your members of the population or your vassal states back at home, to just cement the relationship type thing,
And it has astonishing feedbacks. Like that Somali group was key, and it even got like lots of praise in US media at the time of the BLM riots in 2020. The Somali group was key, apparently, to getting the riots going in Minnesota in 2020. I mean, this is all empire, and that's part of what was starting to happen. And I think it's really, really obvious to Americans now, especially when they see like the CIA interfering to stop Trump being elected with the Hunter Biden laptop letter in 2020, that as far as the real power of the country was concerned, there literally were no more borders on the earth, and the United States may as well be Somalia. It's all, we manage it all, and we can start fires here in Minnesota or over there. It doesn't matter to us. We don't give a shit. And that's what they reacted to. This kind of, hang on a second, they don't give a shit about this country at all. At all. Here's another example of something that happened this week. And I don't know if this is a counter example to what we just said, or maybe we can make it fit and be consistent with this new imperial order or whatever's happening.
Not an imperial
Trump
order.
sends Richard Grenell to Venezuela. May remember him. He was ambassador to Germany in the first Trump administration, who returns after meeting Maduro, all smiles. Hello, Mr. Gringo. Agreeing to repatriate 6 American hostages and broker a deal to return illegals to Venezuela, including this notorious gang, apparently the one that was occupying apartment blocks in Colorado or somewhere. I'm like, what the hell? That's it. Wow, yeah. And it's the gang members are Tren de Aragua. Not only that, Trump said of the deal that Venezuela has further agreed to supply the transportation to get them back to Venezuela. This is Trump saying Venezuela has not independently announced the deal, as it says there on BBC. It's Grenell has posted footage of him boarding the plane with these 6 Americans he's taking back, which I'll get to in a moment. But if you scroll all the way down to the last few paragraphs, I was really stunned by this statement here. Venezuelan state media said the discussions with Grenell had been respectful. After the meeting, Maduro himself said the talks had zero agenda and that he sought a, quote, new beginning in bilateral relations with the US. That's like, this is Maduro, who Trump wanted regime change last time.
All bets are off. And
then you're like, well, who are these hostages? Because people have been saying, well, there were hostages. Well, obviously we don't know who they are by name, but Grenell has posted photos, selfies of himself with them. I'm sure people can figure out who they are. There's 6 guys, 2 black guys. One looks a bit Latino. Are they any of these guys? This is 2024. Venezuela says it arrested 6 foreigners allegedly involved in a plot to kill Maduro.
Yep, that's who they are. That's why you didn't hear about them. What hostages?
Okay, so that's from last year. You remember he was re-elected, Maduro, last summer. Massive protests, probably CIA color revolution type op. In the middle of that, Venezuela indeed arrested people they said were gringos, and they've been sent to whack Maduro. Maybe it was then, or maybe it was these guys, because you go back 4 years prior. Venezuela says 2 Americans arrested over plot to topple leader. That's from May 2020. I think in this one, can you scroll down? There's photos of the guys. Oh, and they're named as well. Luke Denman and Aaron Berry. So yeah, that's maybe it's symptomatic of a change. But we're going to stop trying to whack Maduro, and instead we're going to do deals with him.
Well, of course, there's all sorts of when you start to dismantle empire and the the relationships that that you had established under it, but previously you're going to have to form new alliances. All sorts of new alliances are going to form. The whole thing's going to it's all going to, like I said, it's all going to change, and maybe not fall apart, but it's all going to change radically. And I don't know how you can change it radically without some of it falling apart or going pear-shaped. I mean, there's going to be the rise of over the next few years. You're going to see the rise of, already seeing it really, but you're going to see the rise of more right-wing populist governments, not because they're right-wing or populist, but because they're nationalistic. Because this era that we're entering into with Trump is one that's going to be defined by a reversion to nationalism in every country. And nationalism just in the straight-up official version of it, i.e. countries are being forced to look to their own national interests and either form alliances, probably form alliances, so the breakdown of old alliances and the formation of new alliances.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see because, just recently in Germany, there were the Bundestag was trying, or at least discussing, the possibility of banning the far right.
Yeah. Well, that's not going to work.
So
obviously.
it'll be interesting to see how these kinds of things shake out. Where there's the globalists who are currently running things in a particular area, but things are changing, and America's not quite there to scratch their back and protect them and take care of the opposition in the same way.
Exactly. So, no color revolution or European version of color revolutions. Less of that influence, less money, less involvement and that kind of thing, because it costs money, and also it's not necessarily in the interest of Trump's America. So it depends. It depends. Ultimately, it comes down to what they decide is what is in their interest and what isn't. But right off the bat, the main thing obviously is money, and where we're spending far too much money on people for no return, or not enough return. So that's going to fucking shake everything up, because that's the way it has been. Basically, America spending money for ideological reasons rather than fiscal reasons, practical fiscal reasons. But I think it's ideological. If the ideology goes hand in hand with it, I think Trump genuinely is, and the people that he's gathered around him are ideologically opposed to that idea that necessarily comes with empire, which is diversity and mixing of cultures and mixing of populations and all that kind of stuff, and the pushing of, and you have to push that radical left-wing agenda in order to get the people on board with
because they
mass
can
migration.
See all of the people who are ostensibly against that, then
they're going to leverage those people to win elections.
So I'm wondering if it's going to be, kind of like how things are going to go tits up with, Trump in power. They blame Trump and then they say, see, don't you want us taking control of everything again? And then, you can just kind of basically do the same thing everywhere else, where it's like, see, we gave you the right-wing party and look at what happened. Don't you wish you had food on the shelves?
Yeah. I don't at that point, I don't know. If it gets that bad, I think all sorts of ideologies will be taking a back seat, except the very basic ones where people kind of tend to stick together. There's an in-group thing starts dominating in people's minds, I think it would only embolden it in a certain sense if you or encourage it if you get a situation where people in given countries, or in a lot of countries, are suffering from food scarcity and all that kind of stuff, that those kind of hardships tend to encourage in-group thinking, which is similar to nationalistic ideas rather than let's go back. It's like when there's not enough food in the country, don't you want to bring in more migrants? It's like, no.
Yeah. Marco Rubio used the M word. This maybe does speak to what you're saying about an ideological recognition.
Yeah, Marco Rubio is the last person to come out with that, but it just shows you how they can all turn cult.
Do you want to play it?
Go on ahead, yeah.
I think we spend a lot of time in American politics debating tactics, like what we're going to do, who we're going to sanction, what letter we're going to send or whatever. I think it really has to start with strategy. What is the strategic objective? What's the purpose, the mission? And I think the mission of American foreign policy, and this may sound sort of obvious, but I think it's been lost. The interest of American foreign policy is to further the national interest of the United States of America, right? I mean,
America first.
And that's the way the world has always worked. The way the world has always worked is that the Chinese will do what's in the best interest of China, the Russians will do what's in the best interest of Russia, You know, the Chileans are going to do what's in the best interest of Chile, and the United States needs to do what's in the best interest of the United States. Where our interests align, that's where you have partnerships and alliances. Where our differences are not aligned, that is where the job of diplomacy is to prevent conflict while still furthering our national interest and understanding they're going to further theirs. And that's been lost. And I think that was lost at the end of the Cold War because we were the only power in the world. And so we assumed this responsibility of sort of becoming the global government in many cases, trying to solve every problem. And there are terrible things happening in the world. There are. And then there are things that are terrible that impact our national interest directly. And we need to prioritize those again. So it's not normal for the world to simply have a unipolar power. That was an anomaly. It was the product of the end of the Cold War. But eventually you were going to reach back to a point where you had a multipolar world, great powers in different parts of the planet. We face that now with China and to some extent, you know, Russia. And then you have rogue states like Iran and North Korea you have to deal with. So now more than ever, we need to remember that foreign policy should always be about furthering the national interest of the United States and doing so to the extent possible, avoiding war and armed conflict, which we have seen 2 times in the last century.
Yeah. The only reason he's saying that, I mean, you could just call him, poor Marco is like, well, he's not speaking for himself, obviously, but, you know, Trump and all them, you know, my point to them would be like, you know, the reason you're talking like that now is because
they've been forced to.
Yeah, you have no choice. You know, the reason you're talking about, you know, Russia and China asserting their national interest is because Russia and China have brought themselves to the position where they're able to do that, whereas beforehand, when they weren't able to do that, you had no consideration of that whatsoever.
Yeah. It wasn't an anomaly then; it was forever.
But that's the British Empire thing, you know. It's like, you know, the powerful do as they will, and the
weak suffer what they must,
and that's the attitude. That's how the world works, you know, has worked. But it's all different now. So we're moving into they're having to accept the reality of a multipolar world and say, let's all, you know, let's all be calm.
I think when he said it, part of his brain went, oh, did I just fucking say that? I mean, a multi shit, I've said it. I'll keep going.
No, I mean, I don't know.
It's gas.
I think that's Trump.
At the same time, Trump's tweeting, anyone in BRICS who starts an alternative currency, you're dead meat.
Yeah.
But as someone responded, I think Peskov responded, he said, there's no plan for a BRICS alternative currency. It doesn't, the plan isn't. Not working like that.
Yeah. Anyway, gotta go. It's 6:30, almost.
Not a word about Brigitte.
Not a word about Brigitte, but we have to wait till tomorrow.
Okay.
The main meat is coming tomorrow. Yeah. From Candace Owens, supposedly. We'll see. I don't think there'll be any well, maybe, you never know. I don't think there'll be any revelations. We have the inside scoop on that anyway, and you know, whatever. It's a done deal, like, but I don't know. You have to get Trump. We need to get Trump to instead of just tariffing people, if
exposing their politics.
Yeah, well, that's just part of like a kind of tax. You know what I mean? It would be a bit taxing for Macron to have it revealed that he's married to a man. You know what I mean? Taxing. Yeah. So you could put some pressure on that way. You know, tariffs aren't working in France. What about your wife then? What's going on with her?
I mean,
maybe Fox News needs to do a little story on that.
On that foxy lady.
On that foxy lady. Anyway, speaking of French people, what do you call a French man who has just been attacked by a cat?
Monsieur Meow.
Claude.
Oh.
Boom. Boom.
No.
Good one.
No, merci.
Claude. I am Claude. Why, did a cat just scratch you? You could use that one on the next French person you meet who's called Claude. You have no idea what you're talking about, but
yeah.
Anyway, on that, once again, hilarious note, we'll leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks for watching, commenting. Hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back next week with another one on whatever bullshit's been going on between now and then, which there will be quite a lot, probably.
A lot.
Given the
we can't keep up.
Way things
We're swimming in it.
Too much.
Anyway, have a good week. See you later.
Can't stop the signal now.